We'll be getting started in about a minute here, so just hang tight and for about a minute, and we'll get started. Today's session is all about Niagara 4 tagging and tag dictionaries. And from our perspective, we feel that tagging and tag dictionaries really is the most significant feature in Niagara 4 for a variety of reasons, but which we'll tell you about in a minute. But most importantly, that this really sets the stage for many things that Niagara 4 has to offer. So in today's session, we're going to talk about the tagging process and how it can be used to identify meta information about devices within the building systems, and look at a variety of new views, new navigation, and we'll also cover the tagging process, some common dictionaries that are included in Niagara 4, one of which is Project Haystack, which many of you know. Lynxspring is a big supporter of Project Haystack methodologies. We're going to look at how to create custom tags and look at some of the new search features that the tags can be utilized to apply. And joining me today and really presenting this content is Jim Ryan, and many of you know him. He heads up our training efforts and also our efforts for our Center of Excellence that we are beginning to build here at Lynxspring. So the webinar is scheduled for 30 minutes, and for those of you who've been on in the past, we like to try to keep those at 30 minutes. So we'll have some time for questions, but some limited time. Please use your chat function, and we'll try to get to those questions. And should we not get to your question and you have additional questions, you can email us at marketing@lynxspring.com or training@lynxspring.com. So without further ado, Jim, tell us a little bit about tagging and tag dictionaries in Niagara 4.
All right, thank you, Mark. Again, this is Jim Ryan. And what I'd like to talk to you about today, first off, to set the stage, for those of you that are really familiar with AX, we've always had a way to add metadata to different points. We may or may not have used it. We may or may not have done it. It was somewhat of an arduous process to go in and have to add slots, to set them up as metadata, and then really to get our most value out of them, to then get really proficient with things like the BQL searches. What Tridium has done with this tagging feature, and the reason why we feel like it's probably the most important foundational change, is they've given us a really simple way to semantically model our data through the use of metadata and make it just a really simple, not quite drag and drop, but akin to that analogy type process, so that we can actually manage our data, access it with third-party tools, and not have to know the naming conventions, so that we can jump in and use the new search service. It sets the foundation for using the new hierarchy service. Templating, probably the most single powerful new feature in Niagara 4 when it's done correctly, is entirely enabled by these tags. So this is the foundational skill that we need to master as Niagara 4 integrators if we want to start working smarter and not harder and doing less work over time as we apply these tags. So the tags all start with the tag dictionaries, and the tag dictionaries are found in a service, and I've got my demo station open here, and you're going to find out that the tag dictionary service is in all of your stations because by default Niagara already has a tag dictionary. It is the Niagara Tag Dictionary. And on this pane, which is the kind of the database pane, if you will, for this, the Tag Dictionary Manager, we can add additional dictionaries. Now, I've added a dictionary, Haystack, and I've added a demo dictionary just for myself. But the way that I add those is there's a palette of tag dictionaries. The Haystack Tag Dictionary is actually found in the Haystack palette, and all you have to do is drag the Haystack Dictionary in, and it's good to go. And Tridium is maintaining that haystack dictionary so that the module is updated as the haystack community updates its definitions. So you're always going to have the most up-to-date haystack definitions if you're keeping your Niagara installation up to date. But what's inside one of these dictionaries? Well, let's take a look. If I want to go into the haystack dictionary, and I can just go to its property sheet view, I find out that it's got a few different components, the most important one of which are these tag definitions and tag group definitions. What this does, when I expand it, is it shows every single tag. So what we're looking at right here is every tag that's currently recognized in the haystack conventions, so that I could add these tags to a point. And we'll go over how to do that shortly. But you can see there's quite a few. In addition to the tags, we have tag groups, because it's going to get burdensome if I need to add the same 4 tags every time I add a particular device, something like, say, a return air pressure sensor. And what these tag groups do is it lets me put those tags all together in a group. So now I've saved a little bit of time. Instead of adding return and air and pressure and sensor separately in 4 different tagging efforts, I just add this batch group of definitions. And that's really easy to set up even when you're setting up your own dictionaries. What's a little bit more complicated, and what you probably need to use a little bit of the Niagara for training to get your head around, is these tag rules. Tag rules are found in a smart dictionary. And all smart dictionaries do is say, hey, every time a point is added that meets certain criteria, automatically add some tags. The Niagara dictionary that is in every station by default is already doing this. Every time you drop a point onto a wire sheet, it is in the background adding some implied tags like Niagara point. When you add a history, it's adding the history tag, just so that we have ways of identifying that data already. So the tag rules help us set some implied tags up. And we'll see that as we look at some of the points that are tagged with these dictionaries. But additionally, I can create my own dictionary. If I have a shop definition that I want to use, or if I have a particular scheme that I'm trying to tag for, because let's be honest, we can use this for a variety of reasons. I could be setting up a tag dictionary with the purpose of enabling some easy hierarchical navigation. If I want to give an enterprise customer ways to navigate their system in a way that makes sense for them, I can set up a dictionary that does most of the work for me. I have a choice. I can do all the work in the hierarchy setup, or I can do all the work here in the tags. And a lot of times it makes more sense. But to add a dictionary is really simple. We hit New. We decide whether we want a tag dictionary or a smart tag. Smart tags with those implied tags. For simplicity's sake, I'll add a tag dictionary. For today's, I'm just going to call this our Lynxspring dictionary. And the next thing I have to do is give it a namespace. And this is up to 4 letters that we use to identify the dictionary. In this case, I'm just going to use LS. This now lets me set the context for different searches. If I go into my Lynxspring dictionary, I'm going to find out that I don't have anything in there. But what I can do is add some tags. And the tag that I'm going to add today, just for the sake of demonstration, is I'm going to add a string tag, and I'm going to call this a campus. And just like that, I've created a new tag that essentially adds a metadata type field to any object that I want, that I can do campus. So if I'm doing an enterprise type navigation, I can do that. I could add a marker tag, and a marker tag is just basically a way to say this is this type. So I might say that this is an HVAC type tag versus maybe a lighting type tag. However, I'm going to set this up. And all I'm doing is priming myself to use these tags later as I navigate and do some points. While we're in here, it's important to note that you can actually, from the main view, so let me open this up real quick. From our main view inside the tag dictionary service, we can actually take and import and export these tags in a CSV format that you could then edit offline, say in Excel or some other editor program. Or if you already have a set of these rules put together, you can get it in the right format and bring them in and out. So now I can share this dictionary around and make that, say, a shop standard. So that's pretty important to know as well. And it's just simply a matter of hitting it and telling it where you want it to go. Always going to be a CSV file. So that's the dictionaries and setting them up. We can see it's pretty simple. I can type anything I want in there, and really the N4 training, the classroom course, and then some follow-on guidance that you'll find out in the actual tagging document help walk you through what a lot of these tags actually are and what you're doing as you go further on in the station. So let's look at how I actually might tag something. And all I've got is a couple points here. And there's already tags on them, like I said. If I right-click and use Edit Tags, this is where I'm actually going to do my direct tagging. But I also find the implied tags. These are the ones that have been added in the background based on those smart rules. So even though I didn't add them, it already knows that it has a Niagara name, a display name, a type, all the way down to things like the current value that I could then search against. So I find different ways to look at the implied tags. But direct tag, and I'm calling this a fan, and what I do first is I choose which dictionary it comes from, and I choose which points or which tag or tags I want to add. And all I have to do is add that tag and save it, and now that point is tagged up with the HVAC tag. Or if I use a tag group, I could tag a whole group of them together, or I can select through and put as many on as I want. At the simplest level, that's all it takes to tag. In fact, if I go one step simpler even, when I go to edit the tags, I can add a tag without actually putting a dictionary on it. I can just start typing in my own namespace, and I can just call the tag, my tag, call it a marker tag, and it's there. There's no dictionary associated with it. I can't save it. I can't export it, so I lose some value there. But anywhere along the way, I can just tag it up. Either way, I didn't have to go to the slot sheet and add slots and add a new slot and make sure that it was a Baja string or Baja marker, and then go ahead and add the metadata flags. All that's really being done for me by this tagging service. So at the simplest, we can do tags, we can do ad hoc tags, we can use the stuff that we've done. That's tagging an individual object. Not exactly the best workflow, though. Because what if we could tag as we discovered and brought points in? And that's what I'm going to do now. If I go to the BACnet network, and I go look at my BACnet device, I find that I have these temperature sensors, for lack of a better example. And what I can do is up here on the toolbar, bring up the tagging view. And now I can choose and even narrow down the scope and say, I want to add temp tags to all of these points. So all I have to do is grab them, add the tag, and that's it. I've added that tag to all of those devices. I can then also bring those devices down into my database. I'll give that a second to actually happen. All right, so we're having an error actually bringing stuff in. Let's try to bring just one of them in. Okay, let's bring in something else that should work. And it looks like my station needs to reset for that to happen. So what I'll describe very quickly is just what's going on this page. As I bring items in, I can just select one or multiple tags that I would like to tag them with, and they'll come in. And that can come in with multiple dictionaries. And this is really the second most efficient way. It's certainly more efficient than tagging each piece individually on the wire sheet. But here we can actually tag it as we bring a device in. And we can put device tags. We can put really any kind of data associated with it we want to build our model out. Additionally, I can add tags in batch. And that's probably the most efficient and the best way to tag things up using our program service and the batch editor. I can find my objects. I can set my scope for where I'd really like it to be. So in this case, I'll set it up for our tagging folder. Ask it to find all my components. Obviously, remove the components that we don't want to add tags to. And now I can just use this Add Tag button, choose which tag I would like, and just like that, I've done it. So I can now do that across batches using my traditional BQL to find everything that I want to tag all at once with a set of devices, or set them up with maybe a campus or some other type ID. In fact, on these, I'll also type it, or also get the campus tag on there. Notice I could then edit from here as well. I could just batch edit them all to the same campus name if I wanted to, or I could just keep them with nothing at all. What I will do is come back down just quickly to our tagging model. Yes, it's set. And all I'll do is I will go ahead and give each one of these an actual campus. So I can differentiate between them. So that's pretty much all we need to know. The other thing we can do is we can edit tags that already exist in templates directly in here, but that would be better covered in a webinar that covers, say, the templating actions, because that's a lot more advanced. Really, it's building on this basic tagging function that we've just used. So what really is the first primary purpose of this tagging besides just giving ourselves a data model? And that's going to be searching on that data model. So there's a couple different views that introduce us to this new search capability in Niagara. And the first one is the search service, the default page of which is just a search pane. But more importantly, this is also where I can set up my property sheet for my search service. It lets me set my default search scheme. Right now, it's NEQL or NEQL. We could set this up in the future to accommodate other schemes. This is the one that's working out of the box with Niagara right now. It also scopes my searches. So right now it's got one that is configured to search just the config section of the station. But I could narrow that down and add another one that is just the driver's portion of the station, provided I know the rest of the data about it, including things like the lexicon key and the ORD. Really, I just need that ORD, and I would be able to go ahead and do that. And that would just give me another place to search. Lets me choose how many searches I can have at once and the max results per search. Really, this is just to keep you so that you don't slow down your station as you do it. So this is where you can set those kinds of values. But again, if I go to the main search property, I can now search the dictionaries. We saw that default namespace up in our tag dictionary service, or if we didn't, I'll show you real quickly here. In the property sheet, I can choose what the default namespace is. So any query right now that I want to run against the haystack dictionary, which is HS, I can run without appending HX to the beginning. So I can run a search, and I can say, I want to know all points that are labeled as pumps, and it's going to go out and try to find that marker, and it found it. So in this case, there was only one result. No big deal. But what if I wanted to run a query in the Niagara namespace for all of the points? Well, I can't do that unless I put the dictionary first. So now this is going to go find every point in the station, or that lives under the config section, and it's going to go find all those for me. We can see it's limited to 20 results, but again, my max results allow me to go to the next page and the next page. On this search pane, we'll see a couple things. First of all, stuff like alarm statuses bleed through. So I'm going to see those colors to very quickly call out alarm and down, that sort of thing, fault, in my search service. I can already see the ORD that point lives under if I just need to find that very quickly. I have the option to then come up and look at just a quick little widget that shows me the current value and what it's doing. And additionally, especially if it has numeric data, I can immediately take it to the charting view. So now I'm already back to the charting. For those of you that saw the webinar last time, you know how that works. So that's nice. The really interesting thing, though, is this whole time in the background, these points are staying subscribed, so I can watch these change. And I can alter that behavior as well by using the settings. I can choose whether I want the result subscribed. Obviously, subscription uses some station resources. And here's where I select the scope as well. So if I had added, say, drivers as its own separate scope, this is where I could narrow that down and say only search in drivers, or only search in my backnet, only search in wherever I'm looking for to find these points. And so there's a lot of value there. I can combine this with other types of queries. And find certain values that are, say, out of range or in a particular range. as long as I know the tags to search for. So now I'm combining a dictionary search for any Niagara points where the current value flag is over 100 on the haystack side. So the randoms are obviously jumping out of the way there, as well as some of these sine waves, but we can actually go in here and find out different data, and I can do this to find out what things are, say, out of range for, an alarm, that kind of stuff, just by calling out the current state instead of current value. I can go find all of my points through an alarm. This is going to give us a faster way to navigate our station and find just the data we want, provided we've given ourselves the tags to get there. If I want to use the new tags that I just added, if my station doesn't crash, I'll be able to go in there and use that ls colon, because that was the namespace I defined. And it looks like this is going down. So we'll give it a second. The other place I can find the search service is I can actually add it as its own little sidebar. So that's convenient. I don't have to take up my whole screen to use it. So let me go back into my, say, let's look for everything that we enabled and called HVAC. And I have found that from my Lynxspring module. So I can search that on the side. And again, I can keep these subscribed. I can change those settings under my little settings tab, choose to subscribe to results, and do that sort of thing. So that's really convenient. The nice thing about this search bar is that it is an HTML5 view, which means this can be embedded along with your new views to not require the applet, and I can give the user a way to search through different things. And I might give him the namespace that I've designed for him, or the tag dictionary I've designed for him, to find things in a way that makes sense to that individual. So we can search through there. We could also search, and I know that I used campus. Oops. Spelling matters and capitalization matters for this. So I bet you I used a capital C because I'm really bad about that. So I have 2 with a campus result, but maybe I don't just want campus. I want to know which campus was the Dallas campus. And I can, again, just use that equal formatting to pull only the one that I've labeled Dallas, or in this case, I could have hundreds of points that are associated with that campus. This could be store numbers, this could be geography. However I choose to set it up, I can go ahead and use that equal convention to call out the different tags and to set up the space the way that we would like it. And then to get those results and do something with it. Maybe I'm building my graphics and I want to be able to pull the points as I bring them in, building a report, that kind of thing. So it's really, really valuable to be able to use that functionality either in the sidebar or in the main page view if you prefer that. Again, that all starts with just setting up and sitting down a little bit ahead of time to determine what kind of metadata you're actually adding. What I can do from here as well, if I actually go to the point, because I can actually tell it to just take me straight to my board, and I can actually select, say, the view of this board, we can find out where those tags were added. And already I can see that it added the Niagara device marker tag, it's added the HVAC marker tag, and I've added my campus tag. That was the string tag that I added just out of the little dictionary that I created. What you won't see here are those implied tags, because what we all know is that there's a lot more tags on this device. If I were to go to its edit tags dialog, the only place I can find the implied tags is right here in the edit tags dialog. And this is how I could search things like current value from the haystack dictionary. It's a smart tag, it's automatically added, everything's got it, so I can go ahead and start doing searches on things like current value, its state, its status in this case. As long as I learn those conventions, it makes it much easier to go through. So I could also look for all display names that have a particular type or whatever else that I'd like, and I can keep that away from having to do it all the time with really complex BQL searches. So really a valuable tool there. The only other place that we can see these implied tags is on the spy tool. If I spy an object, I can actually use it there as well. So if you're familiar with spying and doing that, I'm not going to go into it here, but if you're familiar with spying and being able to go into a point that way, you can see the implied tags, but really the edit dialog is probably the simplest place to get into that. This really is kind of just all you need to know to get started with tagging. Obviously, there's a lot more you can do, and as you start to think about this, or as you start to get experience building up stations and adding points using these tags, I think you'll find you get more excited about it the way that we have. At first, this is very simplistic, and you can see where there's some value, but as you start building them and digging further in Niagara 4, you realize they've just given us a way to put any kind of information we want against any component in the station, and then search for it, pull it out in third-party data, export it, use it in graphics, really just build entire navigation schemes around it. So really, really powerful stuff with the tag dictionaries, and you may start finding you have some more exciting uses that you'd like to use it for, or that you might want to give recommendations for, because obviously Tridium's looking for ways to improve it as they go into the next versions of Niagara. If you'd like to see this more in person, or if you've been on the fence about getting your Niagara 4 training, we're actually really happy to announce right now that Lynxspring will be offering its first in-house Niagara 4 week-long live instructor-led Niagara 4 training, November 16th through the 20th. Tridium will be here to help us out with it since it's our very first course. We'll make sure everything's ironed out and good to go. But really, there's your first chance if you've been holding off on the computer-based training and you really wanted to wait until one of us was available to walk you through it and really expand on the value that we're seeing in Niagara 4. That's your first chance. It's on our website. If you go to lynxspring.com and select training, you can sign up there. Additionally, if you have questions, you are always welcome to ask at marketing@lynxspring.com or training@lynxspring.com. We don't have a ton of time right now, but if you have questions, we've got a couple minutes so that I can try to answer them, or Marc can answer them for you. Otherwise, that's what we've got for you today.
One question that came in, Jim, was, the question is, do we believe the tagging function is valuable for a single building deployment as well as a multi-site, multi-campus type environment?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. And I think what we're finding, the more we dig into it, yes, it's still valuable on a single site, depending on what you want to do with it. Obviously, it's really easy to see how this scales to an enterprise level. Really, really simple, actually, to see how navigating different campuses and that kind of thing could be really valuable. But here's where, here's the new Niagara 4 workflow. So let me let you in on this. If I'm going to develop anything, integrate anything, my new workflow in Niagara 4 should be to bring the device in, to tag it, everything I can think of about it to tag it, to make the links to everywhere else on my station I'd like to go, and then it's to grab that device, turn it into a template, and then delete it and drop it back in again and make sure that it works. Because once I've integrated a device once in Niagara 4, I shouldn't have to do it again. When we combine the power of templating on top of tagging, and hopefully we'll get an opportunity to show that to you either in person in class or down the road in maybe an intermediate class, because there's a lot to grasp, and it's really probably not going to fit in one of these 30-minute sessions. But the power of templating is that I can drop an object that I've integrated previously into a station, and it looks at the tags that it used before to establish relationships between devices. And it says something like a boiler frost protection loop. It says something like, hey, I'm really interested in finding, the current frost set point, or I'm interested in finding what's the current hot water temperature, outside air temperature. And it looks for those same tags in the new station that it had in the old one, and provided they exist, it'll even wire itself. So I don't even have to go through the trouble of jumping around the station and adding those tags. Now it has a dialogue to make sure that I'm wiring where I want to wire. But for a single building application, that doesn't seem as powerful with the tagging by itself. But once you've actually looked at doing it based on establishing templates or using templates or finding a problem quickly, if I need to look at every VAV in the building quickly, I could still go through the old BQL method, but if they're in this search, I can look for the VAVs and do a search on the related AHUs or rooftop units that are associated with all the way to the chain. And I can look at those parent-child type relationships all the way down. So really, in a single building application, you get a lot more data just based on, navigating and troubleshooting, perhaps, than you do, giving that end user that enterprise navigation. But either way, really, really powerful. And again, if I want to use the hierarchy service at all, or the hierarchy view in the nav tree, to give a user a navigation scheme that makes sense for them and for their role, I've got to use the tags as the foundation, because without tags, I can't create a hierarchy.
All right, well, thanks, Jim. Again, so we can wrap up here. Just as a reminder, again, we'll be having another subject matter next month, and we'll advise you what that is. And if you have any suggestions, thoughts on subjects that you would like added to our 30 Minutes with Lynxspring webinar series, please email marketing@lynxspring.com or marc.petock@lynxspring.com. And for those of you who haven't gotten your Niagara 4 certification yet, again, let me just remind you that you can do it online if you're already AX certified. And as Jim alluded to earlier, we are offering the first classroom based training November 16th through the 20th, and encourage those of you who would like to come to that, please go ahead and sign up. So again, from all of us at Lynxspring, 30 Minutes with Lynxspring webinar series, we thank you, and see you next month.